Got a nice jacket on there, Mr. Kamal.
Oh, thank you, Brian. How are you?
I'm well.
Good.
I can't remember the last time I wore a jacket.
Yeah. Hi, Amy. Hi, Mary Jo. Hi, Brandon. Is Ifan in?
Nope. All right, I see it's 5:30. I will call the meeting to order. As a preliminary matter, this is Brendan Tedstone, Select Board Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Irfan Nasrullah is not here yet. Brian Herr.
Here.
Mary Jo Lafreniere. All right. Well, she was here. All right. And Amy Ritterbush.
Here.
Brendan Tedstone is here. Mr. Nasrullah, are you here?
I am here.
All right. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Norman Kamalov.
I'm here.
Elaine Lazarus. I don't believe she's here. That's okay. Additional speakers this evening may include Sean McAuliffe, Wilson St. Pierre, Kathy Herbal, Arthur Wallace, Andrew Hayes, John Nees, Leslie Fakari, Gunajit Mady, Adam Monroe, Chris Haymans, Tim O'Leary, and John Gellich. If there's anyone who would like to speak during the public forum of the agenda, you must notify the meeting host in advance. You may do so now by using the raise hand feature on Zoom. I request a motion to enter into executive session to approve executive session minutes pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20A, Purpose 6, to consider strategy with respect to the purchase, lease, sale, or value of real property in relation to the former Liberty Mutual property on Franklin Road, two properties, number 0 Hayden Row, East Main Street, which is the Mezit property, and the lease property on East Main Street to the 26.2 Foundation, because an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the board, to allow Norman Kamalo and Elaine Lazarus to participate in the discussion and to reconvene an open session at the conclusion of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Herr?
Or yes.
Ms. Lafreniere? Still not here. Mr. Tedstone, yes. Ms. Ritterbush?
Yes.
Okay, so we will adjourn and go to our Google Meet. What put I?
Right.
Hi, guys. All right, this is Brendan Tedstone, Select Board Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Irfan Nasrullah,
That's really here.
Ryan Herr, Mary Jo Lafreniere, Amy Ritterbush,
Amy Ritterbush here.
and Ted Stone's here. This open meeting of the Hopkinton Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with the Governor Baker's executive order of 12 March 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we're complying with the executive order that suspends requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one of its many channels or platforms. Please note this meeting is being recorded and some of the attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We're now turning to the first agenda item. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct for our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment for the public forum portion of the agenda. The chair will work with the meeting host to call on each pre-registered speaker to make their comment. Each speaker must begin by identifying their name and address. Each speaker will have up to 2 minutes for their comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Let's stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of the United
of the United
States of America and to the
to the
republic for
republic
which
which
it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with
with
liberty.
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you bear with me for just a moment. Let me see. Josh, are you on? And if you are, I am sending you a text. I'm sorry, just bear with me for one moment here.
It's Ben tonight.
All right, Ben. Thank you. So, Ben, you can kind of go by my keys here. Let me see, Ben, do I have your, no, I don't have your, that's fine. So we will start by going to public forum. Residents are invited to share ideas, opinions, or ask questions of town government. Actually, I'm sorry, before that, I have an announcement to make. All right. So on October 20, the select board met in executive session to consider strategy with respect to the purchase of the portion of the former Liberty Mutual property located at 71 Franklin Road. At that time, it was reported that the current owners of that property, Seaboard Solar, had declined to meet with the town manager to discuss the matter since the property was not for sale, and they were therefore unwilling to entertain any discussions at this time regarding the property's acquisition. Members of the select board then discussed how this information should be made public, and based on the advice of town council, I am making this announcement today. So that was the announcement that I needed to make. So public forum, I see that there's 2 attendees with their hand up, so we're going to shut that off now. So looks like Miss Matina, Ben, if you would liven up Ann Matina's microphone, and just give me a moment here. I don't want anybody to send any information to people about me not being fair. So
No,
Miss Matina,
I'm here.
okay, Miss Matina, you have 2 minutes. You're on the clock starting now.
Okay, I won't even take 2 minutes. I just will take about 30 seconds. I am calling in this evening to urge the select board to support, put their full support behind the Mapc pledge this evening. I think it's really important that as a community that we take this step, and that our leaders, our elected leaders, do so in a very public manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Matina. So for this other person, I don't have a name. I just have a 508-625-2096 phone number. So if you would identify yourself by name and tell us who you are, please. Actually, I'm sorry, Ben, if you want to unmute this person.
Do you hear me now?
I can hear you.
All right, my name is Ann Karnowski. I have the group called Save the Forest. And Seaboard Solar is going to have to sell the forest part. They've sold the building in the front for $4 million. And they sold the forested part should be a lot less. And there are certain open space committees in town that would like to have that forest with its trails and its wildlife. So Seaboard can wait for years. We should ask the town council how long it takes to bring a case to Superior Court. But I think Seaboard is going to have to sell. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Great. So let's see. So the COVID-19 update and public health agent discussion. Mr. McAuliffe, if you would, please. See, you're not yet zoomed up on audio and video. Mr. McAuliffe, before you start, I would like to say thank you and to you and Casey and all involved with everything that's going on. Being somebody that's relatively close to the front lines as I am, I understand the amount of work that's done with your job on a day-to-day basis, between contact tracing and dealing with putting people in quarantine and dealing with people that don't want to be in quarantine and you're like an accountant during tax season. I'm sure that you're 20, 22 hours a day working and we certainly appreciate it. So a job well done and keep doing it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. I mean, it's one of the things, Casey and I, we say every week, it's really the residents that are, sustaining us through this effort, because if it weren't for their terrific feedback, their, it just all of the good and kind words that we get from them, this job would be truly terrible. But they're really doing a great job at, keeping us and just keeping our spirits up. So that said, so for the counts, I don't think it's any surprise or any, it's no surprise that we've seen an incredible surge over the last 2 months. We have 276 total cases today at this time. We just had 264 yesterday. So we're seeing significant increases each day. We have 47 active cases, 216 recovered, and no additional deaths. So we're still at 13. We've seen 23 new cases since last Wednesday. And, as I've reported, we had 140 cases from March to September 20th, and we've had over 140 cases since September 21st to today. And I say over 140 because we know that there are cases that haven't been added to our count yet. That said, the positivity rate is increasing in town. We went up from 1.55% on 11/19. Last week we were at a 2.59. I expect us to stay pretty close to that number as we go into tomorrow. On a positive note, we've had less than 5 COVID-19 hospitalizations in this most recent wave. Most have been a simple visit to a 1 to 2 day stay, and those have been related to low blood saturation levels or difficulties breathing.
Low oxygen saturation in the blood, Sean, not blood saturation.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not the clinician. That's Casey. I'm the general soil guy.
I got her back for now. Let her get a nap. I'll cover the clinical part.
Yeah. Okay. Metrics. One of the things that Casey and I continue to, impress upon people is, to date, we still have no evidence of school or community spread. We've been able to track every case coming into town and everything that's presented itself in school. And we're doing a really good job at containing the illness. It's just, you know, we have individuals contracting illness at work, and then we have spread in the home. But because Casey and I are reaching out to virtually every resident within, you know, a day to 2 days, we've been able to, you know, really confine it to the home and not let it get out, you know, spreading throughout the neighborhood community. We have, you know, right now we have a really good working relationship with the school administration and the school nurses. We're actually rolling out an attestation software product next week that should significantly reduce the amount of casework that both the health department and the school nurses are processing. We've been assisting the schools in the management of their out-of-town staff because, you know, unlike Hopkinton, there are staff throughout this region, a couple in Rhode Island, they haven't even heard from their health departments. So, you know, the school is relying on us to help manage, you know, the employees that are just getting no guidance. So, you know, as I say, you know, we're doing a lot. We're providing a huge amount of work to the residents in the systems with it that are operating within the town to kind of keep everything going. You know, we've brought 2 college students on that are working on tracing communications work, data analysis. We're onboarding a part-time nurse right now. We're getting daily, you know, notices from residents that want to come and start assisting us. You know, we're just awarded a $19,800 capacity grant from the Metro West Health Foundation to support these efforts, and we're, you know, exploring other options via either public safety. So if we see additional surge, where we might be able to draw on some of their staff that are familiar with case management to assist us with this process. You know, we're managing all the contact tracing that we can in town. Once we trace it to the town limits, we're passing that off to the state, because that's just, you know, we don't have the capacity right now to manage that. That's what the contact tracing group or the contact tracing collaborative that the state put together is set up to do. And we're finding that that's been effective at helping control, you know, spread in the town. As I said, most of our cases are from work exposures that spread throughout the home. We have several travel-related and sport-related cases. But again, we've been able to, you know, isolate those and keep that in the home. The sports-related cases, we haven't seen any transmission, you know, to other athletes. And then the remainder of our cases are coming from, you know, it's from social gatherings at restaurants, functions outside of the home, but all of these activities are happening outside of Hopkinton. So, you know, we've just been trying to impress upon our residents, just, you know, if you're participating in any activities, you know, be it sports, dining out, whatever, outside of town, you just got to give it a second thought, because there's a lot of risk out there. You know, I was speaking to Norman about, you know, where are we in the vaccination process? You know, Casey has updated and modified our emergency dispensing site plan to address the COVID-19 vaccinations. We've been bringing in, we've got, generators, tents, we have vaccination stations, we have all this equipment coming in that we paid for through grants. We have updated our plan. And right now it looks like we should expect vaccines to be delivered to our department in the spring. And that's when we'll be starting our mass distribution. We're in the process of putting together several contingency plans should, we have, dramatic or, just dramatic weather events. We want to make sure that, if we've got Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday operating at, one of the schools, and then we know that there's going to be a snowstorm or something, we're going to be able to transition to another building. And, maybe, we've been talking to the fire chief, maybe it's through one of the DPW buildings, but we're looking at our options so that we can provide a continuity of service so that we're expediting the vaccine distribution as quickly and efficiently as possible. And then we expect another vaccine update from the state on Friday, December 4th. And I'll just end with, we're just, again, imploring that residents and the workforce, treat the virus with respect, wear your face covering. It's the law. Socially distance, practice good hygiene, and most importantly, we just need people to stay home when you're ill. If someone in the household is ill, they should assume that it's COVID. And we can't afford to have people saying, oh, I've got a workplace exposure, I've been recommended to go to get tested today, let me set my kids off to school. They really need to keep their kids at home. They need to, their loved ones should stay at home until they know what that result is, because it's that stuff that's really bogging Casey and I down. I mean, we put 125 people into quarantine Tuesday and Wednesday night. So it's, if we would just, stay home and keep people home when they're ill, that would be a huge relief to our management system. So that's it for COVID.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. And again, keep up the good work. Moving on to the consent agenda. The board will consider approving the consent agenda consisting of, number one, approval of the minutes on the November 10 meeting.
Mr. Chair. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
If I may, whilst we still have Sean, with your permission, may we talk about the health agent position?
We do not have Sean on anymore, Mr. Kamalu. Oh, there he is.
Yes.
Yeah, you can talk about that for 5 minutes, 4 minutes.
Okay, by way of introduction, I'm requesting respectfully the board's support in hiring a health agent for the health department. This request is coming before you tonight through the collaborative effort between my office, the HR office, the health services director, and the guidance of the Board of Health through the chair, Lisa Whittemore. Primarily, the position is responsible or will be responsible for departmental level environmental health services in accordance with the policies of the Board of Health and the health director, involving both administrative and inspectional work. Why now? It needs not, why now? The key is we are right in the middle of a pandemic. And you just heard from the health services director on the numbers that they are dealing with. And we're doing so wonderfully through a 3-person team. We also need to focus on continuing the operations of the department. For example, this position will perform the administration of the town's public health program to include the enforcement of state and local public health laws rules and regulations, the processing of applications, and the issuance of permits and licenses, as well as the maintenance of the records. As you know, Sean has been working an inordinate amount of hours per day. This position will relieve him of some of the administrative work at the office level. And when he takes time off, this position will serve as the director during the health services director's absences. The big question is, how do we fund this? Because it wasn't in the budget. I've already talked to the finance team through the efforts that we've put together. There are various options that are available to us. We can go through the contingency, the compensation contingency fund. We can go through the end of year transfers. And I think based on the preliminary comments from the CFO, we may be leaning more towards using the reserve fund. This is a process that will require us to go to the appropriations committee and will allow a much wider discussion of this funding process. Again, I'm respectfully requesting that you support this request for an additional position in the health services department. We need the help now, and this position can be paid for from the approved budget.
Thank you, Mr. Kamal. This is coming up later in the agenda, correct?
No, it's now, it was listed as the COVID-19 update and the health agent position.
All right. Board, any questions, Mr. Nasrullah?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Is this a permanent position that we're trying to hire?
Yes, this will be a permanent position.
And I understand like right now we're in the middle of a pandemic and we need them now, but is the demand, will we still need, once we get through the pandemic, do we still have that need?
Clearly, yes. As you know, there is a great deal of inspection work that is done in the office. This position will conduct food inspection services. They will also conduct any other environmental health related issues that come up in the office. In addition, they will be there to support the consultant who does the Title V inspections. And again, this is a position that we absolutely will need going forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Herr?
So could this funding come from the pandemic relief funds that we have?
From the CARES Act? God bless you, Norm.
Yes. The answer is it depends on the timing. The current CARES funding available to the town ends December 31st. And in all instances where we rely on that funding source, we have to demonstrate beneficial use. In other words, we have to have the position now for it to be of benefit during the COVID-19 crisis. We're hoping that Washington will provide additional funding post December 31st. However, we believe if we're to rely on our local resources, Mr. Hare, we do have the funding to support this position.
It's an odd time to do something like this, but this is an odd situation to say the least, so I'm okay with it.
Okay. Ms. Lafreniere?
Now, this is going to be the health agent. What is, Sean, what is your title?
The health director.
Director. And how are these two positions going to work together?
So currently we have a contract health agent who provides the well and septic service and oversight. They will work under him. There aren't many people with my current health agent's skill set. I'm one of those. So we're looking for someone to provide a backstop that can learn under Brian, provide a backstop to the work that I do. Because right now, I'm providing on average 60 to 80 hours worth of COVID-related work, and that's it. We don't have the capacity to do anything more. So and then when that time comes that the contract agent is ready to retire, we will have someone immediately to slide into that spot. So we will not, have any break in continuity. We'll actually provide, in theory, better service. And, this COVID issue, it's not going to go away. It will not be over with this spring. We probably got another year and a half of this. So, what Norman and I and Lisa have discussed is this is really the best time to act so that, we can continue to maintain a high level of service to the town.
Good, Mary Jo?
Yeah, I'm a little, I guess questionable on, now this is going to be mostly the construction and Title V inspections and all that sort of thing? Because you've been stuck doing the COVID stuff. The construction part of it hasn't been up to the usual standards, or?
No, I mean, the septic and well stuff is being done, but food isn't being done. We're managing
food inspections, yeah.
Food camps. I mean, we're managing camps because camps we have to do camps because it's a backstop for it was a backstop for the daycare centers that were closed. So, I mean, my department has 187 tasks to complete each year for the state. And, the state has issued us a waiver that pretty much carries through the end of December. And we're gonna need bodies and time to do this. For instance, we've got the restaurant inspections that gotta be recertified. There's a lot of this extra work that we've got to make sure we're getting done. And right now it's been put on hold, and it's been put on hold.
Yeah. If I may, Mr. Chair.
A lot of things.
Yeah. Yes. Specifically, Mary Jo, there's the inspectional aspect of the work, which is separate from the work that Sean does.
Right.
It covers the food service permits. They also join with the inspectional team for our permitting process. They inspect restaurants, school cafeterias, retail food stores, food handling and processing. We get a lot of these one-day permits in town, which is good. And we need to have somebody in place to do that. They will inspect nursing homes. We know why it's important to do that based on our experience with COVID-19, recreational camps, septic hauler pumped trucks. They will also be the one responding when we have a food recall in town and any other environmental health issues. We're hearing a lot about that at Legacy Farms. They'll also conduct the annual inspections for animal and barns, kennels, pools, beaches, as well as investigate any alleged environmental nuisance that is brought to the town's attention. So there's going to be a lot of work for this project.
Thank you.
Ms. Ritterbush?
I think everyone asked the questions I would have asked. I was just a little surprised about this because it wasn't much detail in the agenda about it. But I certainly understand the need for it now. And if in 2 or 3 years we decided we didn't need the extra person, we could always discuss it then. But I'm okay with it now. Yeah.
Okay. So, Mr. Kamala, what do you need? You need a motion?
Yes, respectfully, yes, please.
Okay. So I would.
Mr. Chair, I move that we We vote to approve the health agent as proposed.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Kamalo, is that motion in order?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, how do you vote? Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Or yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ms. Ritterbush?
Ritterbush, yes.
Ted Stone, yes. So it carries. Thank you.
Thank you to the board.
Thank you.
All right. So the consent agenda, the board will consider approving the consent agenda consisting of number one, approval of the meetings for November 10. The minutes for the November 10 meeting, accept the gift of 2 picnic tables from the Hopkinton Trails Club, costing $350 in total, with the tables to be placed near the pond at the Pratt's Fields. Accept a $100 gift to the library from the Hopkinton Trails Club towards the purchase of trail use related literature. Accept a $250 gift to the ambulance fund from William Scott Ober and Gail Ober on 17 Fawn Ridge Road. And accept the resignation of Christine Remby from the Historical Commission as she's moved out of town. Any member would like to pull any item out for a separate vote? I will pull out number 4. So I'll request a motion to approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, and 5.
So
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Or yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ritterbush?
Ritterbush, yes.
Mr. Ted Stone, yes. So on number 4, the $250 gift to the ambulance fund from the Obers, I would like to say thank you. As I say each time that anybody makes donations to the ambulance fund, it's an absolutely great fund that the fire chief spends on his discretion, and he has done some marvelous, wonderful things with these gifts, from the mannequin that he has that emulates past calls that they've been on, everything that they do. So these are absolutely wonderful gifts that are given, and thank you very much to the Ober family. So I would like to request a motion to approve consent agenda item number 4.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Or yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ms. Ritterbush?
Ritterbush, yes.
That's done, yes, great. So the I-495, I-90 interchange project, Hopkinton Northwoods Coalition. Residents Wilson, St. Pierre, and Kathy Hervel will make a presentation to the boards, 8 minutes in total, on neighborhood concerns and mitigation recommendations to relieve the redesign of the I-495, I-90 interchange. Mr. St. Pierre and Ms. Hervel, if those, Ben, if you could make sure that their microphones are lined up here, I would appreciate that. I see Mr. St. Pierre is there, and there's Ms. Hervel.
Hi.
Hey, guys and girls.
Hello.
So you're on. Go right ahead.
Okay. So we're working with 8 minutes tonight. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you for the time. Kathy and I are here tonight on behalf of the Hopkinton Northwoods Coalition, which was formed this summer to advocate for the collective interests of property owners around the I-495-90 interchange.
Wilson,
Yep.
Wilson, I'm just going to stop you real quick. You're working with this isn't public comment where I have to cut you off at 2 minutes. So
Okay.
If you go over by a couple of minutes, that's not an issue.
I've timed it at 11, so I'll cut back where I can.
So I'm going to start you up, and I'm going to compare notes at the end. You're on. Go ahead.
Got it. All right. So our coalition includes more than 100 homeowners in the Roosevelt Farms, Huckleberry Road, Hopkinton Meadows, Rocky Woods, and Equestrian Way neighborhoods, as well as several homeowners on Fruit Street. We have 3 priorities. First, safeguarding our water quality. 2, reducing road and construction noise impacts, particularly around this project coming up. And 3, improving road safety along Fruit Street. On the issue of water quality, The interchange project proposes 5 years of construction activity and 11 acres of new impermeable surface with attendant runoff impacts on surrounding groundwater and wildlife. Road salt runoff is already a problem in Roosevelt Farms and Huckleberry Road, and we have seen a number of wells contaminated over the last 10 years, some treated successfully by the Mass DOT's Highway Salt Remediation Program and others not. Abutting construction brings new concerns around heavy metals leaching from previously undisturbed soils and volatile organic compounds such as diesel and oil and concrete treatment chemicals that are used liberally in major highway projects. To address this fall, the coalition sponsored a well water testing drive on Huckleberry Road. As a result, we have over half of households with established pre-construction water baselines. We plan to help organize similar testing drives in Roosevelt Farms, Hopkinton Meadows, and Rocky Woods neighborhoods. We've already sent 10 of these reports, water reports, from Huckleberry Road, 6 from Roosevelt Farms, and 2 from Washington Lane over in Hopkinton Meadows to the Mass Department of Environmental Protection at their request, based on recent public comment letter that Kathy submitted shortly before Thanksgiving. So I'm going to hand it over to Kathy to discuss that aspect a little bit more.
Thanks. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, and thanks, Wilson, and thank you to the board for hearing us tonight. Just a little background on how we got to giving the well information to DEP. The state submitted notice of intents to the the Conservation Commission for Hopkinton as well as Westboro. And because of the significant impacts due to the project to wetlands, river sources, riverfront area and such, because of the amount of impacts, it automatically gets denied by the towns, both Westboro and Hopkinton, and gets pushed off to Mass DEP, their main office, for review under their what they call their variance program, which what they're basically is requesting DEP to provide a variance for them to basically have numerous impacts and such caused by not just the construction, but then obviously after the project. And I know that Don McAdams was involved with that in the review of that. So basically, because of that variance process, there is a public hearing process as well as a public comment period, which we submitted comments back to the DEP, basically with our concerns regarding the water quality, not just for our wells, but also for the environment. As Wilson said, we're going to have an additional 11 acres of impervious area pavement that's going to be salted, and as you well know, the salt on these roads gets used heavily, not even counting fuel oils and those types of products coming from the vehicles. So what we've done is we've requested, due to concerns for the environment as well as our wells, we've requested that the DEP consider a groundwater monitoring program, which would involve installing key monitoring wells in locations that, with the hope that if there's contaminated runoff or as issues may grow as the project's in place, they'll be able to hopefully pick it up before it gets to our wells or environmentally sensitive areas and such. We've asked that the program run not just during construction, but then for some time after the construction, again, as a fail-safe to try to mitigate the problem and not wait till it does happen like it has in the Huckleberry wells that are under a treatment program through the salt remediation program. We've also requested they consider low salt type zones as well as non-sodium based treatment for the interchange due to the impacts. They've basically have proposed infiltration basins as treatment mechanisms. And just an FYI, the gentleman from DEP actually stated on the public hearing call that we had that those facilities do not even treat for salt. So we have some real concerns that this water is just going to run off through these basins, but basically soak into the ground and then get to our wells. So we're really hoping that we can get some attention and some momentum on that end. The DEP will issue their decision after the first of the year, which we actually will have the opportunity to appeal if we feel that it isn't strong enough, or that they don't at least give us some assistance. So we're really just looking for the town to support our efforts with the DEP, and support our idea of the groundwater monitoring program and helping us protect our homes. We don't have public water here, none of us do, and we don't want to be putting treatment on all of our wells. I think it was something that we could hopefully cut off before it happens. Just leading into that as well, we asked DEP for some assistance regarding the noise during the construction as well, because obviously it's an environmental impact to both our health and our homes. DEP, we've asked that they at least try to help us implement normal construction hours for the project. I don't know if any of you are familiar with when the toll booth was removed. And just so you might not have been aware of it, but all that work took place at night, and in the middle of the summer, and we heard jackhammers and such for probably a good month or so through that. And I don't think we want to live through 6 years of that with everything going on with this project under construction. With that, I guess I'm going to turn it back to Wilson to just discuss the noise concerns a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tedstone, how long do I have?
Let's see. About 3 minutes and 48 seconds.
All right, I'll do the abbreviated version. So the other aspect on the road construction noise is that the highway has been steadily creeping closer to the Roosevelt Farms neighborhood in particular over the last 20 years. And this latest project will bring it yet another 60, 80 feet closer to residents' homes there. Obviously, noise levels go up. Now, Roosevelt Farms did some early work starting in 2017 to bring highway project planners out to evaluate the neighborhood for a sound barrier under the Massachusetts Noise Abatement Program. They finally came out in May of 2019, took 1 day of measurements from 2 to 4 p.m., notably not during rush hour and at a time of year when leaves dissipate some of the highway noise. And there were no similar measurements taken on Huckleberry Road, where our noise monitoring program has indicated noise levels are actually higher. And then they declared that based on their cost benefit analysis, our area was not essentially dense enough to qualify under the per home threshold that they designated. We believe their assessment is lacking data, and we've set up our own noise monitoring program, starting with Bull Moose Run, Roosevelt Lane, Huckleberry Road. And we actually have some volunteers down in Hopkinton Meadows and Rocky Woods that we'll move on to next, just to basically check them. And then we also challenge their cost analysis, where in this case, they have 5 years, a 5-year project, $400 million. They have equipment, personnel, and material already in place. And I believe they're using a fully loaded cost to arrive at their cost benefit, which they probably shouldn't, given all of everything they need to do a barrier or a berm is already here for 5 years.
Mr. St. Pierre, so just jumping back to the time, I would be doing the town a massive disservice by cutting you off. I'm just trying to give you some strength. So please don't give us the abbreviated version. Give us your full version. Okay. As much as I'd like to stay on the agenda, this is definitely more important than me staying on my agenda. So please give us the abbreviated version. Give us what you got.
Got it. So, in addition to the highway moving closer to Roosevelt and Bull Moose, they're also taking trees away, which have been, in a lot of places, the one dissipating element against noise, even in our evergreens, especially in the winter. So there's things that the Mass DOT uses a noise model using the measurements that they took for 2 hours one afternoon. And while they put the model out for the public's benefit, it's very hard for a layperson to go in and use it. I spent 3 hours on Sunday trying to do that. And it's, I think Kathy has too, and she's an engineer. So, you know, it's tough and it's not all that transparent. So essentially we're challenging their assumptions, and we're using our own data to do that. And also more subjectively challenging the economies that they're not factoring into the cost of having equipment on site for 5 years. So essentially what we're looking for from the town is, as Kathy mentioned, you know, support for limited waking hours construction, and then the town's advocacy for the residents on Bull Moose Run, Cubs Path, Huckleberry Road, Baldwin Lane, and Rocky Woods Road, who suffer most acutely from current, whether temporary construction noise and future road noise from increased traffic at higher speeds. And there may be creative mechanisms outside, you know, the project's plan itself that could aid in some of that sound barrier infrastructure. And the final issue is Fruit Street Road and bridge safety. As you know, as part of this project, one of the first elements to be replaced is the Fruit Street Bridge. They're going to raise that over the I-495 accelerating ramp south. And Fire Chief Slayman, a big thanks to him for recognizing the impact on our neighborhoods. You know, we're in some places in town, they have to come up and over Saddle Hill Road. And so taking out a bridge between us and Saddle Hill is puts us in a tough spot for emergency services. So I think from what I know, we're supposedly being guaranteed one-way access throughout the project, but we'd like the town's assurance that you'll help us maintain at least that access for our own commuting and also for emergency services during the course of the project. And then another thing that came up more recently at the November 16th Planning Board meeting, which we joined, the state came in to basically share their landscaping plan about what would be done after the bridge was replaced as part of the scenic road regulations. And we asked if there was any ability to shift funding away from landscaping and towards an extension of the sidewalk. Because up here, if you've ever walked around, most of us in these neighborhoods that I've been mentioning, you know, share each other's neighborhoods for walking, running, biking, but there's no contiguous sidewalks between the neighborhoods. The bridge would help that to some degree. It would connect Saddle Hill Road down to Huckleberry, but the stretch between the two Huckleberry entrances, which is directly across from Roosevelt Lane, has no sidewalk, and that's a high-speed lane on Fruit Street with no striping or anything like that. And you know, the planning board said it wasn't the time or place to attempt that maneuver, but you know, I think if the state wanted to do it that way, they could have, and they had no reaction to that. So, you know, in addition, on Fruit Street, the bridge is going to be striped. That's part of the regulation of these days. When you replace a bridge, you have to stripe it, even if it's on a scenic road. And we would just encourage the town to consider striping Fruit Street to the border with Southborough, and then at least as far as the intersection between Fruit Street, Huckleberry, Roosevelt Lane, where the road narrows suddenly. And for any unfamiliar or new drivers or perhaps vision impaired folks at night, that's a very tight spot to go through with approaching trucks and so forth. And I think that would also add to, or at least alleviate some of the concerns along Fruit Street. So in conclusion, the Hopkinton Northwoods Coalition understands the strategic importance to the region of the interchange improvement project. We have no desire or intent to try to stop construction. What we want is partnership from the town as we engage state regulators and representatives to get real consideration for our interests as abutting property owners to a 5-year, $400 million construction project. Massachusetts and the federal government have spent lavishly on infrastructure inside the I-95 Beltway, including 19 sound barriers constructed on I-95 itself since 1981, which was the last year a sound barrier was installed on I-495 in Raynham, 1981. Of the 10 high priority I-90 sound barrier projects on the combined Mass Highway Department and Mass Turnpike Authority list, only 2 are west of Newton. If we cannot extract relatively minor concessions from planners on this project, much of which is supported by federal funds, when can we expect such consideration? Thank you very much. Those are my prepared remarks.
Mr. St. Pierre, that was a very well put together, succinct and factual presentation. And as a board member, presentations as such are few and far between. So I certainly appreciate all your hard work and everything that you and Kathy have done. As far as one of the things I jotted down, and I don't know if Mr. Westerling, I know Mr. Westerling's on, and I know that Chief Slamman is on. I don't know if your concern on during construction that having at the very minimum one-way access, I believe that that's got to be some type of regulation. And if not, I believe there'd have to be like a fire apparatus parked on the opposite side of that, which is a significant cost, because then you got to pay somebody overtime to sit on the fire apparatus in case there's a call. So I don't know if Mr. Westerling and or Mr. Slamman, Chief Slamman, are interested in commenting on that. But what I will say is, so I had to use Fruit Street yesterday coming home because Route 85 was shut down, Saddle Hill was shut down, and I had to make it from work uptown. So I did have to use Fruit Street, and it's not lost on me the scenic aspect of the road as well as its narrowness. So appreciate everything that you're saying there. Chief Slamman, are there any and I'm just speaking off the cuff, are there any regulations on keeping a road open for very minimum of one-way access for emergency apparatus to get back and forth?
I can't reference a regulation, so access is always the major factor, and at least one way into a property would be required. I think what we would assess is the risk and the distance traveled with only one direction, and whether we need to assign people, like you said, a detail or something like that.
Okay, thank you. Board members, Mr. Nasrullah, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to say, Mr. St. Pierre, I think you gave a wonderful presentation. You certainly have my support. I think that we don't want to risk anyone's safety, nor inconvenience one particular part of town for the benefit of everyone else. So I think some mitigation measures certainly seem reasonable, and you certainly have my support.
Thank you, Mr. Herr.
Thank you.
I think in terms of that support, we should reach out to Senate President Spoka, who's our senator. We should reach out to Representative Dykema, and this should come through the town manager's office, I think, in a formal way. We should also engage town council, in my opinion, which is a resource, which is an expense to the community, but I think all of Hopkinton would most likely share in the concern for the area of town and support what these folks are seeking. But I think we need to get town council engaged too, interacting with the Mass DEP, as Kathy knows well in her profession, and me and mine, is not a small undertaking. And I think having town council's guidance and support and strategy with the town manager and our elected representatives would help. In addition, I do think that we need to put our new congressperson to work. And I think we need to put some communications, formal communications from the town into Senator Markey's and Warren's office, also seeking their support and understanding why the feds would be pushing something on us that is not in keeping with the community or the region for that matter. So I think in general, I support the idea of the sound barriers and working with DEP and the other concerns that were outlined. But we can't do it sort of like, by writing a letter from me or from Mr. Kamalo to one or two people and then kind of, okay, we tried. I think it has to be a concerted, coordinated effort, and we got to bring the political entities into play and put pressure on the Mass DOT from those folks that really kind of control what happens with Mass DOT. We have a very good relationship with Mass DOT in general in town. They've been very supportive of the corridor project, which is the 2-mile strip in the center of town that we're going to start working on here very, very soon. And we want to protect that relationship. But on the other hand, I think we got to make sure that we protect our residents first and foremost too. So a lot to consider here, but I do think this is a clear example of where we need to engage our elected representatives to help us out. We don't run to them all the time for all kinds of little things. We do a lot on our own and get things done, but this is one where we're going to need some help.
Agreed. Thank you. Ms. Lafreniere.
Well, this problem isn't really new to me. When I was in the Senate, I worked with people from Roosevelt Farms and Cubs Path, and we were trying to get sound barriers. At that time, we were not successful, but we did get some lighting. There was some really bad lighting problems along with the noise problem from the pike. And we actually had people in people's bedrooms during the night to monitor these things. And we did get lights changed and directions changed and a few smaller things back then. But I certainly wanted to see barriers at that time. And we couldn't get like you said, 19 years ago was the last time, and nothing west of Newton. And they just weren't doing them, and they weren't going to do them. And we had a very difficult time with it. And I think, you know, it's time. This kind of issue in that area has been ongoing for 10 or 15, maybe somewhere between 10 and 15 years now. When I worked on it, it's probably 12 years ago.
Okay.
So I would be very supportive of this project, and I love the idea of groundwater monitoring. And groundwater monitoring program, I think, is an excellent idea.
Agreed. Great. Ms. Ritterbusch?
I will say I agree with what everyone else said. I think the concerns are very valid and the mitigation that they're requesting is reasonable. And so I think we should support this. I assume this has already been addressed, but there's not any way these residents could connect to the town water supply, right? They must be too far.
That is a question for Mr. Westerling, who I believe is still alive and up here. But I believe you're correct. Mr. Westerling, if you would unmute yourself and let us know if, in fact, these neighborhoods are too far away or it is impossible for them to hook up to town water and sewer.
The nearest water on Fruit Street, Mr. Chairman, is down in the area of North Street. So it would be a considerable distance to run water main that length.
Yep, agreed. Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And yeah, so I'm going to echo what Mr. Hurst said, that, you know, we don't often try to get Carolyn and Carolyn Dykema and Senator Spilka on board. But when we do, they've been responsive and very, very helpful. This type of issue is absolutely exactly what we as elected representatives of the town are here for, is to do the fighting for you and fighting for the town. So between Mr. Kamalu, Carolyn Dykema, and Senator Spilka, I have worked with all three, and I am convinced that when either of the three or all three sink their teeth into an issue, it gets positive results. So Mr. Kamalu, give me 1 second here. So like Mr. Hurst said, why don't we get Ray involved, and we'll get see if we can't get Senator Spilka and Representative Dykema involved. And I don't know what your relationship or anybody's relationship in town is with Markey and the other one there, Warren. But if we can get them involved, great. So I would ask the board if they would approve us to, if they would be in favor of us kind of using what resources we can to try to assist this group in getting what's right. Mr. Nasrullah?
I would certainly be in support of using our resources, and I mean that's what we're here for. This is what we're here for, so to serve our community. So I think exercising everything at our disposal certainly makes sense to me. I agree with Mr. Herr that we need to bring in some of the heavy hitters here, and that's what they're there for. So fully, I'm totally on board.
Awesome, Mr. Herr.
Mr. Kamal, do we need a motion to do this to kind of get the forces moving in the right direction, or do you got what you need right now?
Yeah, through the chair, I believe the board's consensus is pretty clear. I can share with the board as well as the public that at staff level, we've already made preliminary contact with our legislative team as well as town council on this issue. So we stand ready to help.
Awesome, great. So is there anything that you need from us with the exception of us all saying go?
I think
or do you even need that?
I think we're good now.
Okay, you're good. So board members, unless you're adamantly against us moving forward and helping out this group, say it. If not, we'll assume that you're on board, and Mr. Kamalu, release the hounds.
Go.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Wilson. Thank you, Kat. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too.
Take care.
Post-community agreement, Perkin-Elmer Incorporated Marijuana Research Facility. The select board will review and consider approving a host community agreement with Perkin-Elmer at 5 Parkwood Drive for a marijuana research facility. If the board approves the host community agreement, Perkin-Elmer will proceed with the licensing process through the Cannabis Control Commission. Mr. Kamalu.
Yeah, through the chair, the draft agreement included in your packet identifies the town of Hopkinton and Perkin-Elmer Health Sciences as the parties to the agreement. It's a 5-year term, and this is relative to a property at 5 Parkwood Drive here in Hopkinton. The purpose is to seek a license from the Cannabis Control Commission so that Perkin-Elmer Health Sciences can operate a marijuana research facility at this location. The terms included are pretty standard. They are similar to the ones that the board reviewed recently for a similar operation along South Street. In summary, the company has presented to us that they will comply with the town zoning as well as the state regulations regarding such facilities. In terms of community benefits, they are agreeing to provide qualified staff to participate in the town STEM programs, as well as any other health and drug abuse prevention programs that the town can identify. In total, the company will provide 40 hours annually to meet this obligation. Part of the discussion in terms of community benefits was identifying what is commonly referred to as an impact fee. Based on representations of the company, the agreement does not require the company to pay a community impact fee to the town for now. Notwithstanding that, there is agreement between the town and the company. Should impacts be identified, quantified by the town, the parties will promptly meet, negotiate, and identify how the company is going to mitigate those impacts. Company also agrees to work with local businesses, suppliers, contractors, as well as also hiring local residents within the confines of the state and federal laws. In addition, the company has agreed to provide its support to social justice and equity as required by the cannabis law here in Massachusetts, including providing reports on that issue to the town regularly, as well as should the town need any in-kind services in relation to the subject matter, the company will cooperate with the town. Hours of operation, we did agree to limiting the operation to the hours of 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. And also that the company will continue to pay real and personal property taxes unless it applies for an abatement due to a claim of an excess valuation.
Good.
Overall, in terms of security, there's agreement that the company will work through our public safety departments on all security related issues. And again, the term of the agreement is 5 years.
Great. So, Mr. Kamala, would I be speaking out of turn to say that historically PerkinElmer has been a great neighbor and a great partner for the community at Hopkinton?
Yeah, absolutely spot on. I can also add to that the negotiations with PerkinElmer on this topic were very forward-looking, very productive, and they're very cooperative.
And one of the things that I love that you brought up is that they will strive to hire local people as well as use local companies. I know many people from Hopkinton that have and do work for PerkinElmer. So this isn't a new concept for them. They have really embraced Hopkinton, and Hopkinton, I think, has done the same to them. So this is not a new company that's coming in and asking for the world. They've been a very good neighbor to us. Not a good neighbor, but a good partner with us for years, going back to when it was Zymark. So you know, I don't have an issue at all as long as you vetted it and you're good with it, as well as town council and whomever. I'm good with it. But I'm going to open it up to the board. Mr. Nasrullah.
Yes, Mr. Khumalo. A couple questions. One, you'd mentioned that there's going to be limited hours from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. So it's only, is this just during COVID time or is this permanent?
He said 12 a.m., Mr. Nasrullah.
Yeah.
6 to 12. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. And I think just for the benefit of everyone watching, I think it's important to note that this is a research facility. It is not a dispensary. That is not allowed in our town. Do we know what kind of research they're going to be conducting? This isn't a testing facility, so they're going to be researching new products, I would imagine.
With the chair's permission, a chief representing PerkinElmer is also participating in the meeting. He can answer that question.
I don't believe that Mr. Wallace is on here, Mr. Kamalo.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the attendees and I don't see Mr. Wallace on there.
Okay, so I'm okay. I think these are also questions that'll be asked during the community meeting when they do come in. But I was just trying to get a little information on it. But if we don't have that, then
no, I can answer it from my. I wanted him to give the expert answer. In general, our discussions have focused on PerkinElmer focusing on research and testing equipment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does that require marijuana to be located on site?
That would not be the primary purpose of the operation.
Great, thank you. I'm good with it.
Excellent. Mr. Herr?
A couple of thoughts. Mr. Kamala, the host community agreement, there is a clause in there that it can be amended.
Correct.
Okay. Years ago, probably 10 years ago now, for several years, I did a ton of business with PerkinElmer in Connecticut, not here in Hopkinton. They're a Class A company and they do things right. So I'm not surprised that they were not really good to work with through this process. So I'm a big fan of PerkinElmer as a corporation. While I don't know exactly what goes on here in Hopkinton, and I don't know the people there at Hopkinton per se, I do know the company well, and I think very highly of them. Also, I think very highly of Mr. Kamalo and Mr. Mieri's ability to draft and craft post-community agreements. We've done a lot of these here in the last 20 years, and they all seem to work out quite well for us, as long as it can be amended, because some things do change. Obviously, we've seen that with Legacy. As long as it can be changed, I support it very much. Thank you.
Great. Ms. Lafreniere? I
read the entire thing and I made some notes and some things, and it's a very thorough host agreement. And I really like the ending part where they are going to assume all the legal and fees um, for the agreement. And there's a lot in it about security and about working with the police chief and the fire chief. And I was just wondering if we had any comment from them on it, or have they read it?
Are we at that point yet, Mr. Kamalo?
Act it first.
Yeah, couple things. The public safety officials have been part of the discussions with Peck and Elmer. However, they've not been directly involved in the negotiations of the HCA. However, they are familiar with the terms.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Ritterbush?
I don't think I have any questions. Everyone has already asked anything that I had a question about, and it seems like a good thing to go ahead and sign.
Okay. So I will request a motion to approve the host community agreement with Perk and Elmer Incorporated for marijuana research facility at 5 Parkwood Drive.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, just.
Yes, sir, Mr. Kamalo, go ahead.
Yeah, there was a question asked earlier in terms of the actual work. I pulled out the answer to that, as well as if any marijuana will be stored. This would be a research and development lab focusing on developing improved instruments and methods for state-approved cannabis laboratories to assure a safe and well-characterized product. They will be buying and storing cannabis projects from Massachusetts sources for part of their testing process. It's not that they will specifically be testing the marijuana itself, but they will be using the marijuana product to measure and evaluate the instruments that they'll be developing on site.
Great, thank you. So if they're really a device manufacturer, is really what it's coming down to. I think by the devices are being used for testing marijuana, but not necessarily using marijuana in the site. Fantastic.
Good. So, Mr.
All right.
Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Frenier, yes.
Ms. Ritterbush?
Ritterbush, yes.
Headstone, yes. Thank you very much. Sustainable Green Committee charge. The board will consider proposed changes to the charge of the Sustainable Green Committee. When the board appointed new membership to this committee that had been inactive for some time, we then asked them to look at the committee charge to see if there should be changes. The committee has made recommendations, most notably increasing membership to 15 and the length of the terms from 1 year to 3 year. At the present time, the committee has 10 members. So it looks like the Sustainable Green Committee Chair is present to answer any questions. Board, do you have any questions? And
I was kind of expecting some kind of presentation. So I guess my first question would be, why do we need to expand the committee?
If I may, in fact, the revisions before the board reflect a joint effort at staff level, as well as changes that were suggested by the committee. Specifically, the current charge has 16 members, of which one group is labeled as associate and the other group is labeled as full members. The change now is that everybody becomes a full member, but the number of committee members goes down to 15 instead of 16. And that change—
There's going to be one member that's out?
Yes.
They don't have it yet.
It's not full right now, the committee.
Okay.
Yeah. And that change came from the committee itself. The other changes were proposed by staff, and these are changes that are purely administrative, identifying the overarching vision, the values, and the vision theme as pulled out from the town's vision statement, as well as making all the legal references that are required relative to open meeting laws, as well as other laws that are applicable to the work of the Sustainable Green Committee.
Okay. So this is pretty much administrative.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm all set.
Does anyone have any questions for Andrew Hayes? Is Andrew Hayes here?
No, somebody's here.
I don't see Andrew Hayes here. So, all right. Board members, do you have any
Oh,
questions?
Amy Groves is here.
Yeah, but that's not Andrew Hayes.
Mr. Chair, I'm here in Andrew's absence. I'm the secretary of the committee, so I'm here to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you. Board, no questions?
I was just going to add, it looked like a good change to me that the quorum is the majority of those that have been appointed, because right now they don't have a full board, so it could be hard to make quorum.
Good.
But that's a good change.
All right. So do we need to, so I'll request a motion to approve the revised charge of the Sustainable Green Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Frenier, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Headstone, yes. Thank you. Tax classification hearing. I call the public hearing to order. The purpose of this hearing is for the board to hear information and determine the percentage of local tax levy to be borne by each class of real and personal property in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56. We will start with a presentation by the Board of Assessors. Mr. Neese. Do we have Mr. Neese with us? Or Mr. Kari?
I am here, but I don't. Can you hear me?
I can. Are you Hopkinton Public Meeting 2?
I guess so.
Okay. And we also, oh, go ahead.
Would the chair admit the CFO and my board members if they are on as well?
Yes, Leslie Ficaro, Leslie Ficari, Mr. Madi, and Adam Monroe.
Right, and is Tim O'Leary available?
He's on.
He's on, okay. Then hello, everyone. I would like to just briefly introduce my board members. Leslie Ficari is the chair. Guna is one of the members, and Adam is one of the members as well. Thank you for joining us. We sent the select board the classification letter and the classification PowerPoint in advance, and we will be putting that information on the website for the residents within the next few days. Ben, would you call the PowerPoint up, please? Thank you. And would you go to slide 9, please, Ben? So in the interest of time, I'm only going to introduce 2 slides to the select board tonight, since we have sent it to you in advance. If you would like me to go back after that to the beginning and run through them all, I'm happy to do that or answer your questions. The proposed tax rate right now is $17.08 and $17.09 for residential property. So because of the means tested exemption, which is funded only through the residential class, that has changed the rate by 1 cent. So the residential property will be charged at $17.09. The commercial, the industrial, and the open space property will be charged at $17.08. That is always subject to change by the Division of Local Services and the Bureau of Accounts as they review all of our tax documents. And would you go to the last slide, please, Ben? And these are the motions we need from the select board tonight. When you are finished, I would just like to comment, and Elaine might be addressing this with you, but in order to have the tax rate approved, we need to submit both the tax rate recap and the LA5. The recap is signed by the Board of Assessors, and they can do that electronically. The LA5 is signed by the Board of Assessors and the Select Board. The Board of Assessor members have an electronic signature in Gateway. I'm not sure that the Select Board do, which means that as soon as possible and as soon as practical, you will need to make arrangements with Elaine to go in and sign the LA5, or we will not be able to submit that document and get an approved tax rate. So I'll leave that to Elaine and the Select Board members to work out. So Mr. Chair, I'll turn this back to you. These are the motions that the Select Board has to vote on. Before you start, if anyone wants me to go back to the beginning of the presentation and run through all the slides, I'm happy to do it.
No, I think, so Mr. Neese, for the motions that we have here, we have a bunch of motions that we're going to have to deal with. Do you have any suggestions on residential factor, open space discount? What we've done, actually, could you just give me a breakdown of what we've done historically? So
Yeah.
on the,
I appreciate the question. I appreciate the question. The assessing staff and the select board are actually not supposed to offer an opinion on any of these to the select board. It is your decision alone. But I will tell you that in the 6 years that I've been in Hopkinton, and probably for a number of years before that, you have not implemented a residential factor, an open space discount, a residential exemption, other than now the new means tested exemption that we have, a small commercial exemption, or a split tax rate.
okay, that's exactly my question. So we have a single tax rate, correct?
That is correct.
All right, and it wouldn't make sense financially for our town to do a split tax rate until the commercial got over, what do we say, over 20-something% or 30% or so. So
that is typically what the select board has discussed in the past. We are at about 84% residential right now and about 16% commercial, industrial, and open space.
Yep, and that's about where we've been. So on my 6 years, 5 years. So board members, any questions? Mr. Nasrullah.
Yeah, so so we've never had an open space discount?
We have not, and we in fact do not have any open space in Hopkinton. So there would be nothing to apply a discount to.
Okay, so this is different from like, I have a big bunch of conservation land that in my backyard.
We'll maybe explain it briefly a little bit different. There is only one community in the Commonwealth, and that is the town of Bedford, that actually has open space and has an open space, or that has an open space discount. We have conservation land, we have open space, but it's not coded that way in the land use codes that the state uses. So in that sense, we have no open space for you to vote an open space discount on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Herr.
Fundamental question is motion number 5, whether we have a single or a split tax rate. If you have a single tax rate, that pretty much answers all the other motions as well. The single tax rate is what we have historically always done. It makes sense financially for the town. It makes sense financially for the commercial tax base, and it certainly makes financial sense for the residents as well. If we do a split tax rate, I might save $3 a year on my tax bill. Literally, that's the kind of money I'd save. And Dell EMC would get hit with $400,000 a year. So it doesn't really do anything if we do a split tax rate, except annoy people. And financially, it doesn't really make a bit of difference. So I'm all for the single tax rate, and I'm ready to make that motion if you're ready to accept it.
Thank you. Ms. Lafreniere? Ms. Ritterbusch?
I just wanted to thank the assessors for their presentation that they sent us in the packet. So that really helped explain everything. And I agree that a single tax rate makes sense for our town.
Good. Public comment. Does anyone from the public have anything to add? Seeing none, I request a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere? We may have lost her. Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Headstone, yes. So I will request a motion to not implement a residential factor for 2021. Mr. Nasrullah? Oh, I got to.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'm back.
All right. So we need a second on that.
Second.
Okay. No further discussion. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Headstone, yes. I request
Chair,
a motion. Yes.
Can I make a motion for all of these and do it as a group?
Sure.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to not implement an open space discount for 2021. I move to not implement a residential exemption for 2021. I move to not implement a small commercial exemption for 2021. And I move to implement a single tax rate for 2021. And I move to approve the Form LA5 as presented.
Okay. Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Redstone, yes. Thank you, Mr. Neese, and all the other members of the assessors who made time to come out and see us tonight. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Annual license renewals. The board will begin its annual license renewals this evening. More will be on the agenda for the next meeting. The licenses proposed for renewal this evening have passed relevant police, fire, building, and electrical inspections. Board members, any discussion? Mr. Nasrullah? Mr. Herr?
Not at this time.
Ms. Lafreniere?
No.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
No.
Okay, so I'll request a motion to renew a Section 12 general on-premises all alcohol license for the Hopkinton Tennis and Swim Club, 27 Lumber Street, and approve a waiver of the liquor liability insurance certificate, workman's comp insurance certificate, employee ID number, and tip certification as the premises has not yet been constructed. Okay. Seconded by anybody?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Redstone, yes. I request a motion to renew a Class 1 license for Bulldog Fire Apparatus at 17 Winter Street.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Can we do them all at once, or they have to be individual? They're all the same type.
So I think on the next motion, we can do all of those ones together, but on this one, this is the last one in this class.
Okay.
So, Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Redstone, yes. I request a motion to renew Class 2 licenses for Village Service Centers Incorporated, doing business as Hoptown Auto Sales at 60 Main Street, Johnny Cardoni, doing business as Main Street Service Center, 96 Main Street, Thomas White, Whitehall Auto Sales, 34R Spring Street, and Donald Crawford, DBA WSAB Enterprise, 32 East Main Street.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Mr. Tedstone, yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Can we have the administrator help us remove this motions document specifically with tax rate? Maybe confused. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. Rules of procedure. The board will consider modifications to its adopted rules of procedure. Our packet includes a document showing proposed changes by the town council and town manager staff for our consideration. I will open it up to board member comment and recommendation on the proposed revisions. If members have a lot of comments, perhaps it would be best to start at the beginning and go through the document in order. Mr. Nasrullah.
You know, I've gone through this briefly, and I'm actually in support of all the changes. So I will, yes, I support what we have here. I'm going to let the rest of the board speak further.
Okay. Mr. Herr?
In general, you know, I think our rules and policies and procedures of the board have been working well over the last many years. I know that there's been some concern recently about trying to refresh some of that. It's my understanding that the town council, as well as Mr. Kamalo, have put together the suggested changes. I just want to confirm that in the public meeting here. Mr. Kamalo, is that the case?
That is correct, Mr. Hay. I also want to point out Elaine Lazarus, the assistant town manager, played a significant role in this revision process.
As she always does. I probably should have just gone to her right away. And Mr. Kamalo and Ms. Lazarus, you guys, you support and see the functionality of these changes, and town council does as well.
I'm fully in support of the changes proposed.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Kamala, did you say you're fully in support?
Correct.
Thank you. Ms. Lafreniere?
I think whoever did this did a wonderful job. It's so much more succinct. I think the public is going to be able to read it. It's much clearer, and there's just not a whole lot of added extra, and I think they did a great job. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ritterbusch?
Yeah, I read through that over the weekend and I think it's very well done. I had a few questions, but I had a phone call with Mr. Kamala and Ms. Lazarus to go over my questions, and I'm very happy with we talked it through and I'm happy with the changes.
Great. Thank you. So I will request a motion to approve the rules of procedures as discussed this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Mr. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Ted Stone, yes. MAPC pledge principles. The board will discuss principles portion of the MAPC pledge document. Town council suggested one wording change as noted in our packet. I would like to achieve board consensus around the principles before moving forward. Board members, any comments or recommendations regarding the principles? Mr. Nasrullah? You're
Sorry,
muted.
Yeah, sorry. Just give me 1 minute here. I'm just trying to scroll down to it. So, I mean, as I said previously, I'm fully in support of the MAPC pledge. I think that there's some modifications that were required concerning how our town government is run. I think that these principles though, certainly, I'm certainly supportive of. And I'm also pleased to learn that we're already doing most of it. So,
yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's a pledge that we want to treat people fairly, and I think we're already doing it, and I'm happy to say I want to continue doing that.
Okay, Mr. Herr?
So I think this is the third or fourth meeting where we've had this on the agenda. And I think it merits a lot of time and energy, given the situation in our country, in our state, in our town in some ways. I'm still struggling with the idea of signing on to a pledge that a lot of which we already follow and expect as a community, not only at the board level in the town manager's office, but within our citizenry. And at the same time, if we do this, we could be alienating some of our key colleagues in town, that being our public safety officials. So, I believe that there is systemic racism in America. I believe there is systemic racism in Massachusetts, and I believe there is systemic racism in Hopkinton. I don't know where it is, and I don't pretend to be an expert in understanding it or how we uncover it and how we address it. But I want to. But I don't know if alienating some of our key employees, those that keep us safe in particular, is going to help the cause. I do think, and I know that at the state level, in fact, they just passed, at least through the House and Senate, I think it's the House and Senate right now, maybe out of committee there, that there is a bill pending, and maybe it's going to the governor's desk soon. I don't know the timing of it all, but at the state level, there's going to be some reforms, and those reforms will impact the town of Hopkinton. And those reforms, I think, will help us address and start to uncover where some issues may lie, not only in our town, but in the state. If we get ahead of it with a pledge that says, this is what we're going to do, while other people are doing things that we're going to do too, I think it's going to add confusion to the process and not necessarily help what we all want to do, which is understand, uncover, and end any systemic racism in our community. So again, I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think just jumping onto a pledge because we're all emotionally distraught, in these times, is the answer when it can alienate some of the very people we want to work with and protect as part of this process. So I'm struggling with it. I didn't like some of the terminology when it first came out. There's still terminology in there that I think is going to alienate people. And so I'm not a fan of it at this time. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're getting ahead of ourselves because of our emotions. And we're letting the process manage us instead of us managing the process. And I think any leader in any organization, business, government, or otherwise, we need to be the process managers and not let it manage us. A situation shouldn't be managing us. And that's what this feels like to me, is a situation is managing us instead of the opposite.
Thank you, Mr. Herr. Ms. Lafreniere?
Well, I've given the one that we discussed today, and with the change from the word to enhance, and I really want to work with our safety officials, and I think that this is pretty good. It's prioritizing, and the only changes I would make would be to number 3, and I might lighten that up a little bit. But other than that, the 1, 2, 4, and 5 are fine with me. So I would be willing to sign this.
Okay. Ms. Ritterbusch?
Yeah, I was the one that brought this forth earlier, and I definitely am supportive of us signing the pledge. I do agree with the town council's recommendation to change from established to enhance. And I hope that our law enforcement officers know that we really appreciate all the efforts and programs they're already doing with de-escalation and mental health counselors. And I believe one of our officers has just taken a civil rights course to become a civil rights officer. And I think that's fabulous. And I don't think signing the pledge really takes away from that. And I hope that our employees understand that. So I am comfortable signing the pledge today. And I think it's really important that all towns, even if they don't have a large racism problem, to sign and show solidarity with the whole region and make it a priority for our legislators and higher ups.
All right, so I've looked through it pretty extensively. I think there are definitely some pros and cons to the pledge as written. The conversation, and forgive me, I'm going to do a little bit of reading, which generally I usually speak from the hip, and I think this is a pretty serious issue, and I don't know if I can speak kind of from the hip. So I think the conversation, for the pros, I think the conversation shares insights, strategies, and critical reflections on current practices. I think it's intended to be interventions on a matter of national significance and now common dialogue. And it's meant as constructive implementation of the charter. And then obviously it's addressing a subject that's come up again and again and again and again. So those are the pros. The cons is all we need to do is consume the information and principles that were put out by it's as a question. All we need to do is consume the information and principles that we were put out by MAPC. Active participation is not passive consumer, joint, or co-production. Seek meaningful engagement. Does this discussion rise to the level of needing a public hearing or public meeting? The practice of freedom. What's the role of differing opinions? Those in favor are not the only ones that asked to share perspectives. How to link this awareness with the practice, how to operationalize this, and how we continuously reflect on the actions going forward. And there'll be backlash, and how do we mitigate that? Mr. Khumalo, I've touched base with you on my thoughts on some of this. Do you have anything to add on this? Like, this is something that, we as selectmen, you know, we are in charge, we're the custodians of policies and procedures and things like that. And you're the one that's here every day working and working with the department heads and, you know, Chief Slam and Chief Bennett, et cetera. What are you, I want to know what your thoughts are on this. And if you have anything to add, pro and con to this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Clearly, the fact that the board is having this conversation, I think, speaks to why Hopkinton is a great community. Every time I am part of conversations that celebrate cultural diversity, social justice, and equity, that always, I think, brings some joy to me overall. And I think, as I've shared with some of my colleagues here, I always approach the issue of how we do our work, how we live out our principles in a very pragmatic position. In other words, point number one, I think in terms of timing, signing on to this pledge at this point is simply adding the name of Hopkinton to a process that left the station many months ago. The idea here several months ago when Mapc put this together was at least to bring light to the issue that's being discussed, i.e. racism, social justice, and equity issues. It was also intended to influence and advocate for the process as it was developing up in Boston. And the idea was that the town signing on to the pledge as had been defined and written up at that point. So if Hopkinton is of the opinion that there are some phrases or some words to be changed, then we're moving slightly from the pledge. It becomes an issue for the town. Does the town want to sign on to these principles per se as a community? So that's the first decision point in terms of being pragmatic, i.e. the train already left the station. If we're going to change any words in the pledge, then it becomes a pledge for the town, which is slightly separate from and distinct from the pledge that Mapc put forth. Second level, I always ask myself, if I have principles that are laid out by the community that I'm here to serve, the first day I show up for work, what is it that I'm going to say to my colleagues? So from a pragmatic viewpoint, I'm also interested in the fact that, yes, these principles seem to extend the statement that was added to the town charter. How do we then operationalize these principles day in and day out? That's very important to us. In terms of backlash, I do share that at a very personal level. I am the town manager. I am an African. I am brown. I am black. And clearly, the issues that are raised here are at some level very personal. And I can see, by extension, some members of the community thinking that the town manager is the one who's behind this. And so, yeah, I am sensitive to the issue of backlash. And given our history in humanity, whether you're talking about Europe or Africa or America, whenever these issues are raised, the issue of backlash does come up. So again, in summary, I'm very excited. I'm very joyful that the community is having this conversation. I've talked to other entities in town that are doing this outside the government process, and I think it's brilliant that we're doing it. At a pragmatic level, I'm very interested in terms of how do we operationalize this. As well as going forward, how are we going to mitigate likely backlash?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kamalu. Yes,
Through the chair, if I may.
Yeah.
I just want to point out. I understand Mr. Kamalu's concerned about backlash, but this was driven by the citizens of Hopkinton. This was driven by, by the people of Hopkinton coming here and saying, hey, we're appalled by what's happened and we love our community. We think that everything is fine here. And as they have gone through and discussed with Chief Bennett, they realized, no, we're already adhering to some of these principles, to most of these principles, I would say, even say all. So I understand the concern about backlash, and also as a brown person, I understand that concern of like, oh, it's very self-serving of me, but I don't believe so. I think that, when we're talking about systematic racism, we are talking about how it's going to affect everybody and how we can have a fair playing field. That's fine.
Mr. Chair, I do agree with you, Mr. Nasrallah. I hope you also appreciate the fact that part of our work here in town is to accept that there is diversity in opinions. Whilst I agree with you that this issue was brought to us by citizens, I'm not naive to think that everybody in Hopkinton agrees with this position.
I agree.
I agree, and I don't know. I think there's a fine line between being proactive and stirring a pot that doesn't need to be stirred. And again, as I think Mr. Hurst said, I think that I'm sure there's racism in Hopkinton. Will this pledge eliminate the racism? No, it absolutely won't. And will it have our police department or fire department or town manager or selectman, it doesn't afford them any more power to eradicate racism in Hopkinton. I don't know. I number 4 will work to address racism within law enforcement in a proactive, intentional, and consistent manner. We do that. I don't think, and like I said at the last meeting, I don't think we need to put into writing the things that we do. And if there's a breach in this, if we do find some racism that's going on with our law enforcement, it will be handled swiftly and severely. Make it a priority to take action now as local governments. Again, Mary Jo, you talked about number 3, that you didn't agree with number 3. I think that there's some work to be done on this. And, I have a hard time as a selectman or as a select board member, select person, however you want to say it. I have a hard time looking Chief Bennett in the face and saying, listen, I'm a selectman 4 hours a night, twice a month. I'm going to tell you how to do your job, the job that you've done. I would venture to say perfectly over the last 30 something years. I have a hard time criticizing the work of our police department over an issue that has not come to light to us, as well as, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse and say that, we are the safest. I mean, safety doesn't necessarily mean that we're racist free, but our police department does an absolutely knockdown job. And when we talk about alienating our staff, there are a lot of police departments out there that are hiring. And if some of our highly rated law enforcement officers take offense to the fact that we back this, that think that we need to tell them how to do their job when they already do it wonderfully, then there's a chance that a lot of these cops that we put through the academy and we recently hired and we hope that will be in our community for the next 25, 30 years, will go somewhere else. So I don't think the backlash is an angry Facebook post or somebody standing at the common with a sign that's backing someone politically that you may or may not support. I think this backlash has a lot more legs than what is perceived. It costs the town a ton of money to find a good cop and to send them through the academy and to bring them up to speed. And I think that when we as selectmen, where none of us have any public safety background. The person on the board that has the most public safety background is me, and I don't put it on a resume when I have the resume go out. But far be it, it would be like me second guessing Mr. Herr on his solar, or me second guessing Mr. Nasrullah on his law practice, or whomever. So I would have a problem signing this as it is right now. But
how about if we take a look at each one of the principles and see if we can come to consensus on each individual one, and those that we can come to consensus on, we can put our own statement out. To Mr. Kamala's point, the train has left the station. But I do think, and I hear the passion and the commitment of everyone else on the board here, that we want to do something. So let's figure out what we can come to consensus on, and those statements that we think might alienate some of our colleagues, let's keep those to the side, or at least discuss them when we get to them. But your point about the staffing situation, Mr. Tedstone, is my thinking about we manage the process instead of the process managing us. We're emotional as a country, we're emotional as a state and a town right now, still for a lot of different reasons. And racism clearly is one of those. But managing to emotions is not good business. We run a damn good business here in Hopkinton. We're not perfect, but we've run a really good business here for many, many years. That's why we're not broke like 300 other towns in the state right now because of COVID. That's why we've got some of the greatest schools in the state, let alone the country, if not the country. There's a lot of things that we do really well as we manage our business. And to manage our employees and manage the culture in which they work is part of the process, is part of the management and the leadership process that we are charged with. If we just sign on to things because we're all emotional about something and we lose good employees because of that, well, you know what? 6 months from now, the emotional piece is going to be waning because that's just what happens in life. But the employee problem we're going to have is going to be much bigger. So that's the management, managing the process instead of letting the process manage us is so important to me. I would really suggest that there's 5 or 6 of these principles on this sheet of paper. Let's talk about each one. If we all agree on 1, 3, 5, and whatever, and those are the ones we can agree on. Let's start with what we can find common ground on.
I think one of the concerns that I'm hearing from both Mr. Herr and Mr. Tedstone is something that I was concerned with initially, which is when I said that when we're having these discussions, I think that we should bring in the police, bring in the police chief and talk to him and get in. I think he should be a part of this discussion. Frankly, I understand that he's already doing things, and the way I read this, and the reason I'm comfortable signing on to this, is because it's already being done. I'm not telling the police chief how to do his job. I'm saying, great job, keep going, continue at it, and that's just how I see it. But I think we're doing our community a disservice to not bring police chief, fire chief into this discussion.
If those folks showed up and they sat here with us and had this discussion and they said, we're okay with the verbiage of these principles, I'd be fine. I haven't heard that yet. I haven't seen that yet. And the community hasn't seen that yet either. So if I know there's 20 people running around town that are really into this at the moment in terms of this pledge itself. I mean, we're all concerned about the racism, but other than those 20 people, the community whom we represent, all 18,000 people, haven't seen that yet. If we saw that from our public safety officials, because they're getting feedback from their colleagues in their departments, then I'd feel much differently about this situation, and I'd say yes.
I hear you. I think you raise a valid concern, and that's why I think let's bring them in. Let's bring them in and let's talk to them.
Yeah. We've been asked to sign on to this from the surrounding communities too. And many, many, many of the surrounding communities have signed this pledge or a similar pledge. We can certainly have our own, and we can bring them in, and we can certainly make up our own. But in this day and age, this is long overdue. Some kind of acclamation about the racist problems in this country it's been overdue since the inception of the country. And I think that we are just being asked to be supportive of this and of our other communities. I certainly department thoroughly. I love many of its members. And I think that we are doing a fantastic job as a community, but that doesn't mean that we can't acknowledge something more, something further, and continue to move forward. And I really think that if you don't want to sign this particular document, we will have a document to sign in the future, and I'm sure we will. And I mean, I'm all for bringing in the police chief and the fire chief. They're two of the best people I know, and get them involved. But I've been talking, and I thought the police chief was feeling well involved. He has met with some of the people who are pushing this and spoken with them and has mentioned it. So I mean, I think that the community is getting involved, and I don't know if we sign this particular pledge, but I think that this is long overdue and that we should be acknowledging and signing something.
Mr. Kamala, Mary Jo referenced that there are many communities around us that have signed this. Do you know offhand, and if you don't, Mary Jo, do you know which communities have signed this MAPC pledge?
I submitted that in the packet to the last meeting.
Okay, I don't have that packet in front of me, so.
It was Framingham, Ashland,
Westboro.
Natick had their own, Westboro made up their own. Almost all of our surrounding communities have signed pledge or a similar one for their own, but
The school committee has signed one. Yeah.
Huh?
The Hopkinton School Committee has signed one.
And the Hopkinton School Committee signed their own.
I should say, I asked publicly a couple times if this could be sent to the department heads for comment, but now it sounds like that did not happen.
Say again, Amy?
I had asked it a couple times at other meetings if it could be sent to the department heads for comment, like fire and police. Did that not happen?
I think before we would send it to the one, and Mr. Kamala, maybe we have sent it, but I think before we would send it to the department heads, I think we would need to craft a document for them to review to see if they're in support of it or not. Mr. Kamala?
Yeah, that was my understanding. Yes, previously, Amy, you had mentioned that we consult with everybody else. And I think that's why part of the comments tonight are, what is the process that we lay out for this to invite and also accept comments from our department heads as well as the community.
Yeah, and then just kind of to your list of communities, I'm glad that Framingham signed that, and Natick and Ashland.
And Westboro.
Yeah, and Westboro. I don't aspire to be like Framingham, Natick, Ashland, or Westboro. I would think that they would aspire to be like us. So I wouldn't ever sign a document like this to appease our neighbor towns.
It's not to appease them, it's to be supportive of them.
Okay. So again, I'm not necessarily, I would rather be a leader than a follower. I have no problem crafting a document that works for all of our board members and our community. But I would not ever sign a document because Framingham, Ashland, Westboro, and Natick have signed it. I would not sign a document because Dover, Sherburne, Wellesley, Weston, and Wayland signed it. You know, from where I sit, we are leaders in our communities and leaders in the state of many, many things: police, schools, public safety.
I just want to be a leader in the country on racism also.
Okay, so
I don't want to sign this to lead or follow. I want to sign this because I believe in the principles.
Believe in it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So Mr. Nasrallah had a really good idea, kind of jumping on what some of us have been saying, and I think also supporting his own personal beliefs of getting to this pledge at some point, somehow. And that is to have our police chief and our fire chief join us in a public meeting and have this discussion again and say, guys, what do you think about these preambles, these words? You know, where are your thoughts and where are the thoughts of your team members in what, you know, we're trying to do here? I want to kind of say it again, because I know that some will take the soundbite the wrong way, right? Because we live in this little soundbite world, even here in Metro West. I believe that systemic racism exists in America. I believe it exists in Massachusetts. And I believe systemic racism exists somewhere, somehow in the world of Hopkinton as well. I believe that in my heart. Solving the problem is what we should be focused on, not signing some 6-word thing. Solving the problem is what we should focus on. And if solving the problem is going to alienate some of the most key people we have in our community, keep us safe, then I don't want to do that, because that's not solving the problem. It's just creating a whole new problem around the same problem. I want to solve the problem of systemic racism. It exists, but alienating those that we need help to make that happen is not the way to go about it. That's why I think Mr. Nessel's idea of having those folks come in and talk to us about what they think would motivate their team members and they would be supportive of would be the way to go.
And to go one step further, Mr. Hurt, I would not just invite the fire chief and the police chief, I would invite its members. I would love to have the patrolmen, the sergeants, the lieutenants, the firefighters, the lieutenants there, everybody involved. I would love everybody to have a round table, and knowing that there's no repercussions for their thoughts, and have a not just an open meeting, but a wide open meeting where we would get hopefully opinions from 70 people instead of 2. Granted, those 2 are very accomplished and very worthy and trustworthy and admired leaders, but I would love to hear from everybody.
Well, you're a really good chair. You run a pretty tight meeting, so if you can manage 70 people, I'm all for it. I think that would be the ultimate discussion about this in terms of our public safety and how we can look into our hearts and our brains to figure out where the systemic racism is and start the process. And certainly the words on the pledge, or a pledge of some kind from our community, would be a great place to start. But let's do that together with all of us working at it and not alienate people along the way. I have heard, folks, just so you know, I have heard directly from members of our police force, if you sign that thing, that's BS. I've heard that. Okay?
Yep.
So let's not go there. Let's do this 70-person meeting and have some concrete and constructive discussion around this. I don't want to lose people and cost the town in all kinds of other ways as we try to just sign something because it's the trendy thing to do. I'm all for getting rid of systemic racism, but not by following a trend. I want to make sure we're leading and managing the process.
I think Mr. Herr brings up a good point that there would be an awful lot of people there, and that would be quite the effort by the chair to manage such a large meeting. But the people who are in charge of implementing or in charge of their departments, I think they would be the people that we would need to have present. I mean, but I will leave it at the chair's discretion as to
how we have the union representatives. What can we have the 2 chiefs and the union representatives and 3 or 4 others?
Yeah, I would not steer away from a 70. I'm part of a 200-person meeting 3 times a week with the DPH right now, and as long as you have somebody that can manage it, and with the firefighters and with the police officers, they all work hand in hand on a day-to-day basis in some of the craziest circumstances that any of you can understand. So I think having 70 of those people, and it would be hard. I mean, the fact that we're not paying them, it would be hard to get some of them to come. Some work different shifts, some are sleeping during the meeting times. Like, I get that. We wouldn't get all 70, but we'd love to get a thumbnail shot. And maybe there's some people that are passionate about it that would like to come in and say a few words. Some of the people that Mr. Herb's spoken to, or the people that I've spoken to, maybe they'd love to come and say a few words. I don't know. I just, even though some of those other towns have signed those the pledges, it's the community leaders that signed it, but I don't know if it's the full community that backs it. So, hold on, Mary Jo. Mary Jo, hold on. I would be glad to kind of move this to another meeting. Mr. Kamala, what are your thoughts on this? Again, we play selectmen 4 hours a night, twice a month. This is your bread and butter. This is what you do. So what are your thoughts on on maybe not mandating a meeting with all the police and firefighters, police officers, firefighters, and management in both departments, but offering it.
Yeah. Again, I feel very proud of working with this board and this community. The fact that this conversation is taking place, I think it confirms why Hopkinton is a wonderful community. 2 decision points. I think at this point, the decision for the board is there are principles that are before you that you've looked at for a while. You feel comfortable acting on the document as is now. And the second decision point is there has been a very thoughtful discussion tonight that has identified issues that may require further discussion. So the decision is, do you want to do A or do you want to do B? And the issues that require further discussion will require a much larger meeting. What we can offer is there are individuals who specialize in helping facilitate large meeting discussions. Work with the board in identifying somebody to help us in the event that we think that is going to be the case. More so, this discussion is going to be online since we're doing remote participation meetings.
Mr. Khumalo, as a starting point, couldn't we just simply circulate for comment, get some comment back, and have a working document that we can, that we know that have been commented on, and we have an understanding as to what the concerns are and how we can address those concerns?
I think that depends on how you want to get out of that input. We can circulate and get tons and tons of comments. Do you want to expand this document, or do you want to work with the principles that we have now? That would be the decision I'll be making in terms of, that would be what I reference in terms of deciding how to circulate this and who to circulate it to. And again, for me, looking around the nation and the community, I don't see any downside in having a community-wide discussion.
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I just want to be able to move on this, to have a discussion and not keep kicking it down the bucket, down the path. I think we should have that discussion. Let's move on it and let's do something. Not because we want to follow other towns, but because these are principles that we believe in. And I don't take any shame in saying that I believe in, fairness.
This is when I kind of the way I feel. I don't want to alienate any of the police department or any of the town's departments, but I've been fighting this fight since the 1960s when I sent friends to Selma, Alabama, and to get hurt. And I was there the night in Roxbury, the night Martin Luther King died, and my whole life I have been fighting this racist issue, and I want to see us continue to move forward and to move forward at a lot better pace than we have in the past. And I just think that by supporting something that says that, and I don't care if that's all you want to say, but I feel very strongly, and it's because I believe in it, as Irfan says, and I would like to see this town stand up against racism. I just would like to see us do it.
Okay.
I don't care how we do it.
Okay. So let's table this to the next meeting, Mr. Khumalo. And then I will get with you and we'll figure out a way to facilitate, at the very least, to see if we can get the police chief, fire chief, potentially the DPW director. And then I would love to get their direct subordinates involved as well.
Well, I think we have to open this up then to some of the public who are going to be on. I mean, we don't want this all the good boys in town. We're going to want to open it up to some women's groups too.
It offends me that you think that I'm implying that this is all a good board group.
I'm not implying that you are, but if it winds up to be 90% men, that's not going to do it for us either.
What if it wound up being 90% women?
That wouldn't do it for us either.
True. So
We need a good
we have to play the cards that we're dealt. If we had a 90% woman police force, it wouldn't change my point of view at all. It just happens to be we have a police force and fire force, fire department
It happens that way. Yeah, I mean that's fine, but I mean the school did this. What is the schools like? Our school department has a statement.
Okay.
Why don't we?
We're working on it.
So is it fair to, Mary Jo, is it fair to say that you have an emotional attachment to this issue?
I wouldn't say that necessarily. I have lived with this issue
Okay.
for too long.
I'll answer it for myself. I'll answer that
I'm tired
question.
and I want to keep moving this issue forward.
Okay, I'll answer that question for myself. So I'm a first generation American. My mom and dad are from Ireland. Okay, so I'm actually a dual citizen. And I was raised in a very neutral family. The Irish, they don't get involved in a lot of things. Right? They just kind of stay neutral in the world. And so it's the racism in America is an emotional issue for me. And that's one of the reasons why I talk about the process managing us and not us managing the process. Because I feel myself getting emotional about it as I think about a decision on something like the 6 principles.
It should be.
That's not a good place
Get
to make.
emotional about unfairness.
Mary Jo, just let me talk.
But my job as a selectman in the town of Hopkinton with 18,000 people and a workforce of 800 or whatever it is not to make emotional decisions about something I feel emotional about. It is to make a business decision and a leadership decision and a management decision based on the facts and what's best for the community going forward. Our entire job is about what's best for the community going forward. And understanding racism in Hopkinton is definitely something we need to do as part of our job. But losing half our workforce, Mary Jo, losing half our workforce in that process, either losing them physically or losing them emotionally to their job and their commitment to their job, is not us doing our job for the community.
I'm not
That's why I
asking
say we can't make a decision while we're emotional about it. We need to get some more facts, and the facts should come from those that I'm worried about alienating.
I don't think anyone wants to alienate anyone.
No, we don't.
And from what I hear from everyone on this board, none of us believe in being racist. I don't think any of us want to be. No, that's not the case. And the idea is, how do we implement this? And again, I think like any kind of good decision making, you bring in the interested parties. So let's do that.
Okay. All right, so can we move on, Mr. Khumalo? You and I will get together and we will figure out a way to get this onto the next agenda. We will give it ample amount of time and we will try to nail everything down more succinctly than where we're at right now.
If I may, Mr. Chair, if the board is so inclined, we may have to choose a separate night from a regular meeting.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
I'm absolutely fine with that. Yep, I think that should be the only way to be done. And that would show our commitment as a board to the community and its importance to get this done.
Good idea.
Great idea.
Well, I'll work with you and the board to determine a date to be determined at another time very soon. And we'll work with the police, fire, and its staff, potentially DPW as well. And I don't know, any other groups that people think that we should include in that.
Before the end of the year, right?
Far before the end of the year, yep. Okay. Yep. Hopefully by the end of next week, we can figure out a date.
Yeah.
Sound good, Mr. Khumalo?
That sounds good. We'll also invite the personnel committee as well as the HR department.
Right.
We do have some cultural organizations in Hopkinton of non-white people. We have South Asian Circle of Hopkinton and the Chinese American group. So it seems like we should involve those groups as well, or invite them.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Quarterly deposit and investment report. Chris Haymans, Town Treasurer Collector, will provide the board with an update on quarterly deposit and investment report for the period ending 9/30/20. Mr. Haymans. Oh, we got to liven him up. There he is.
Hello, you guys hear me?
Yes. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Put my video on 1 second.
Hey.
All right. Hi. Thank you for your time tonight. I will be brief. I know we're a little behind. I have an update for you on the town's finances as of the most recent fiscal quarter end, which was on September 30th. I am happy to report that despite the continued COVID-19 crisis, the town remains in a strong position financially. As of the date of this report, the town held $58.8 million in deposits and investments. And our tax collections and state aid, which are the two largest sources of revenue, have continued to track as expected. Notable events that occurred during the quarter include the timely payment of all debt service obligations, the resolution and collection of an aged personal property bill in the amount of $232,000, the receipt of $1.25 million from the Legacy Farms Host Community Agreement, and the corresponding establishment of the school stabilization account. The town's investment returns were in line with overall market performance, taking into account their strategic investment profiles. And just as a quick refresher on that, the investments are split into 3 separate accounts. The stabilization and CPA funds are one, the trust funds, and the other post-employee benefits funds, which is OPEB. And they each have a different risk profile depending on the purpose and liquidity requirements for each account. So for example, there, the stabilization and CPA funds, which the town may have to have an immediate need for, are invested much more conservatively than the OPEB funds, which has a goal of a long-term gain over many years. In the coming months, the town is strategically positioned in terms of reserves, revenues, and investments, and I feel confident in our ability to react to any uncertainty or any unforeseen events that might lie ahead financially. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Wow, that was awesome. Chris, thank you. And so board members, anything, Mr. Nasrullah?
No, I just want to say that's great news. Glad to see we're we're doing all right. It's a difficult time, and thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
No, great news. A lot of hard work by a lot of folks, our professional team, as well as volunteers in the community have put us in this spot, and we're fortunate to be where we are in these very difficult times. And we just need to be very careful going forward because this thing is still quite sensitive and volatile, and gosh only knows what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. So you got to be cautious.
Great. Ms. Lafreniere?
I just want to thank Chris for his hard work, and this is good news. And I'm looking forward to moving forward. Thank you.
Ms. Ritterbusch? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I appreciate you putting together the report, and I'm happy to hear the good news. So thank you.
Yeah, and Chris, thank you very much. You don't know how much I appreciate good news in a short amount of time. So great job. And it's an awesome reflection of what a wonderful town that we are. And, you know, the fact that we're in such a strong financial position at this point, you know, almost a year into this pandemic is a direct reflection of you, Tim, Mr. Khumalo, and everybody else involved in that, in these departments. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Town manager report, Mr. Khumalo.
Yeah, through the chair, quick points, Main Street Corridor Project, AF Amorello and Sons are the chosen contractor for this project. We're looking forward to the project process ramping up going forward. Secondly, we are respectfully requesting the board to approve the town's final Hopkinton hazard mitigation plan, with much thanks to John Gelsich, who was the project manager and also secured the grant that made this happen. Then we have also included in your packet the potential annual town meeting general bylaw amendments. We have dusted the bylaws that were postponed from the last annual town meeting, and we've added a new one which was suggested by one of our residents, namely depositing of leaves and debris on the public right of way. And then I'm also asking the board to respectfully assign the town manager as the appointing authority for the retiree representative under the IAC.
Okay. Board members, anything for Mr. Kamalu? Mr. Nasrullah? Mr. Kerr?
No, all set. Mr. Kamal, real quick though, on the, when will the contract kickoff be with Amarillo, you know?
Yeah, we're talking with our consultants as well as Mass DOT to actually formally launch the project, and we will let you know as soon as possible.
That being the next 30 to 60 days, you think?
Dave just sent me an email. He says in the coming weeks, so it could be sooner than 30 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Lafreniere?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
I was just going to mention that municipal vulnerability to preparedness plan. That I'm glad that we got that done, and we'll be putting that on the website somewhere prominently so everyone knows we're prepared.
And Mr. Kamala, can you repeat to me again who the bid was awarded to for the Main Street Corridor project?
A.F. Amorello and Son.
Yep. I know them. Yep.
They've done some work here in town before.
Yep, they're a good company.
Worcester, out of Worcester?
Yes.
Yeah, we know them.
All right, so based on Mr. Kamala's town manager report, I will request a motion to approve the Hazard Mitigation Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Headstone, yes. I will request a motion to delegate the authority to affirm the retiree member of the Insurance Advisory Committee to the town manager.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Headstone, yes. Thank you. Liaison reports. Mr. Nasrullah?
Just a quick one from Upper Charles Trails. The committee has engaged VHP to conduct feasibility study and basically look at the MIPA impacts. So that's moving forward, and they're doing a lot of hard work. The center school, so yeah, a lot of hard work. They're choosing various routes, and we should have some more information in the coming weeks.
Great. Mr. Herr?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Nothing right now.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
I'll just mention that the planning board has been going through the master plan, which they do every 10 years, and it's been 3 years since they did the last one, and checking in on all the action items for the different boards and committees. And there are several that are on the select board's list of action items. So Mary Lynn Kramer and I sat down last weekend and went through them all, and anything we could find a status update on, we put that in a document. And I was hoping we could review that as a select board at a coming meeting. So just we make sure we're on track with the action items we agreed to.
Okay. And I have none. Future board agenda items. Anyone? No, Mr. Nasrullah?
Well, I think we all kind of agreed that we're going to have this future agenda item on the MAPC pledge, just as long as that one happens before the end of the year, which it sounds like it's going to.
Yes, it will. Mr. Herr? Ms. Lafreniere?
Nothing.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Just the master plan action items.
Okay, and I'm good. Mr. Nasrullah? Yes, sir.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? 7 minutes early. Hearing none. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
To her?
Oh, yes. Good night,
Mr.
all.
Frenier?
Yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Goodstone, yes. Thank you, everyone. See you